The International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan, who also represented William Samoei Ruto in ICC back then as his personal lawyer, has been forced out of all Kenyan cases. This move has been arrived at a day after his very controversial tour, or rather trip, in Kenya. And I know the headlines are reading of excusing himself, but I'm using the word pushed out of all Kenyan cases because according to institutional discipline is that that is not a pedestrian decision that individual makes, but the office of prosecutor in ICC has been forced to make that decision. Karim Khan was in this country last week on Friday to receive, when he was conferred the honorary degree from Mount Kenya University. And the founder of Mount Kenya University is his personal friend, according to what was actually perceived. And that trip was perceived as just a friendship based on friendship. Of course, he was also the guest of honor in that graduation ceremony. But while in the country, he was here in his capacity as Karim Khan. The founder of Mount Kenya University is a personal friend to William Ruto. And I mentioned to you that last year on 6th August, when Paul Gisheru, former William Ruto's lawyer, late William Ruto's lawyer, was being buried in Nakuru, the person that read Ruto's eulogy, President Ruto's eulogy, was founder of Mount Kenya University. And I remember when I analyzed it here in the bold, I was trying to connect the dots. But then, when his presence in the country was very controversial, because at this moment, ICC had received letters from Azimio la Umoja and some other civil society organizations asking the court to investigate police brutality in this country, where Kenyans were brutally killed by people who are believed to be both from the security forces or maybe some militia. So immediately, when this trip was coming, and he's a man who had acted as personal lawyer to William Ruto, and he was also invited by William Ruto's friend, Azimio la Umoja raised complaint about conflict of interest. And in a very brutal, in a very stormy tweet, Martha Karua raised suspicion about the presence of Karim Khan. I want to look for Martha Karua's tweet. Yes, I think he said, ICC prosecutor, this is what Martha tweeted, ICC prosecutor Karim Khan hosting in Kenya this weekend by Mount Kenya University and its founder, a friend to his former client William Ruto, at a time both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza regime have written to ICC on the situation in the country, especially the killing spree of unarmed protesters by police, is not only suspect but also a blot on the credibility of ICC. This is a tweet from Martha Wangari Karua. Martha Karua is also a lawyer and is a co-principal of Azimio la Umoja. And I want to believe that the ICC judges also read this, because immediately this was raised, Kenyans started commenting in the Facebook page of ICC, asking them what Karim Khan was doing in the country. And because looking at the caliber of Martha Karua, even ICC realized that Azimio la Umoja were uncomfortable with the presence of Karim Khan. And they literally raised questions about his presence here. I want to partly agree that on a personal grounds, he could be in the country to maybe just to attend that graduation. But being that we are not having access to intelligence and any other, it cannot be tracked. What exactly would you think can be the reason behind him excusing himself from the cases? I honestly do believe that, leave alone coming in the country, he has made a decision to maybe to excuse himself from the cases to avoid what he has said as conflict of interest. I honestly do think that he's saying that the fact that Ruto was his client can be misconstructed and to mean conflict of interest now that Azimio and Kenya Kwanza are complaining, or rather have launched complaints at the ICC. But if it was on the ground of being Ruto's lawyer, then the visit to Kenya could not have triggered himself being pushed out of the cases. I think I want to execute that point clearly. He's saying that he's avoiding conflict of interest because Kenyans will see him on that. Kenyans will see conflict of interest. It can be raised because Ruto was his client. Now, Ruto was his client 6 years ago. Not 6, I think 8 years ago, because the cases were dropped in 2015, especially one against William Ruto. So Karim Khan did not realize yesterday that Ruto was his client. So wait for the ground of Ruto that he represented William Ruto, then he would have excused himself from the Kenyan cases even before coming to Kenya. But I seem to have a feeling that even his presence here was very, really triggered this from the ICC itself. There is something that maybe is not yet being made here clear. And that is what I want to try to look at. What could not be, what is not being said about him excusing himself. Kindly subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell and like our video. ICC has its own structures, and clearly there is a high possibility that the judges, maybe the court president, asked the prosecutor to excuse himself, thinking that probably there is a possibility that he met Ruto. Why not? Yeah, let's just, they are not saints. Ruto is his client. He has Ruto's number. Ruto is the custodian of the intelligence. He can meet Ruto without anyone knowing except Ruto himself and him. Not even that Ruto's friend knowing. So even the case, even the judges could have reached that position to push him out, even the office could have asked him to excuse himself. Not that he was willing, but they could also be feeling that it's true that his travel to Kenya was a bit misadvised. At this time that he had ties with the sitting president back then, and again, we are also in some sort of a crisis. So the judges could have realized or could have preempted that being that he traveled in Kenya, there is a high possibility, there is a possibility of meeting with the president. That's bit of something that is there. But then, I said this is a very bad news to Kenya Kwanza. And they are actually wondering, why is a prosecutor excusing himself from a non-existing case? Because they have been insisting that Kenya is not in a crisis. We've been told Kenya is not in a crisis. But as we speak, parents have buried their children, their sons. And Luo Nyanza, we've counted 17. You know, so 17 people have been shot, and you still go on top of your curse shamelessly to tell us there is not a crisis, there is a problem. So why this is marked as a bad news is because it clearly shows that in the eye of ICC, there is a crisis. And that is why, because if it is non-existing thing, then no one will even ask Karim Khan to excuse himself from such cases. How do you excuse yourself from a non-existing thing? But you excuse yourself because the Kenyan case is weighty. It's a weighty matter. I may be wrong, but maybe he was even here. Maybe he was here and influenced. That it's high possibility that these two cases have been written. What do you think will stop William Ruto? These two letters have been written. Do you think William Ruto will welcome possibility of ICC investigating the Kenyan cases? Would you think? Yes, because they can investigate and get if there is a threshold, or if there is no threshold, then it's left. It shows that the Kenyan crisis is a weighty matter. Number two, it's also an indication that there can be investigations. Investigation is an option on table. Yes, because that is it. Maybe ICC is still trying to figure out, but if the situation escalates, they can investigate. Because anyway, that is why there is the issue of excusing yourself from the Kenyan cases. The Kenyan cases, one of the Kenyan cases is this. You can't excuse yourself from non-existing issue. Number three, Ruto ties with the former lawyer is inconsequential. You know, ICC, for something I need to explain, is that it has a very strong ties with the British. And most African countries have always blamed the Western powers of using ICC against African presidents. So there is also the question of the network, the footprints. And you know, it's true Ruto do not have a very good record with them, despite the fact that the cases were collapsed. So that's my take on why this Karim Khan has excused himself. I would also want to read your feedback, what you exactly think about this decision. Thank you.